Okay, let's do this. Um, this is going to be a good one. We're going to see how this one makes you feel. Feel free to comment um, anything you want down here. I'm assuming there's going to be some rather interesting comments, and I'm going to address a couple things which I addressed um, in one of my previous videos. There are three types of academies, and we've only got to part one. Plan on doing the second and third here pretty quick. But while I'm down with this shoulder recovery, wanted to get a topic out, kind of help you along the way if you are relatively unsure what your academy culture is. And forgive me, guys, this may bounce around a little bit because I'm having to hold this. I'm kind of confined in my room post-surgery. Had surgery yesterday, so I don't have a really good mount for this. We're going to let this just kind of be a handheld deal. We're going to go through this, and hopefully I can get you all the information that you want here. So this is a hot topic, and I'm going to address white, blue, purple, and brown individually here, and I'm going to give you guys some suggestions and kind of get you an idea of what you may be looking at moving into Jiu-Jitsu Academy, especially once you've made the decision to stay and pursue that art at length. I'm going to place the onus back on y'all, instead of putting all the expectations on the professors that are there, okay? Because I have some opinions there. So the topic of this is going to be stewards, leaders, scholars, and narcissists in Jiu-Jitsu. And we're going to talk about the sort of the distinction between those four, and give you an idea of exactly what it is that I look for, what some coaches look for, and academy culture always plays into that to some degree. So forgive me for taking a few deep breaths here, guys. They gave me a sight block that's kind of disabled like one half of my diaphragm here, so I'm having a hard time drawing a deep breath, trying to get through this recovery here. So stewards, scholars, leaders, and narcissists. And I want to make a distinction here, and tell you what I look for. And sometimes I would be willing to bet that some coaches don't even know what the hell they look for. They're just running a business. Now, I do things differently, and if you disagree with that, then that's fine. Some will say that coaches that go to these links, such as I do, to evaluate their students in such great detail, they're more on the cultish side. Yeah, we'll get into the cultish aspect of it here in a minute. I think that's more of an environmental deal, an atmospheric deal, and I'll give you some things to look out for there. So stewards, when you start coming through this art as a white belt, you're undoubtedly going to see that there's a lot of involvement. There's a lot of things going on within the academy above and beyond just the promotions. Now, promotions seem to be where everybody gets wrapped around the axles, and it's not studying the art, because invariably we're all human beings and we have this little thing called an ego, and it's going to get challenged many times along the way in jiu-jitsu. It's always going to be challenged. And that is going to be the one thing that you have to keep in check. If your ego is not in the right spot, it's going to lead you down probably one of these alternative paths that I'm not looking for. Many coaches certainly aren't looking for. And you need to recognize where you stand on what side of the line. And if you decide to be this way knowingly, and you want to stay this way, it might behoove you to get to know your coach and what he's looking for. You might just sit down and ask him and what he's looking for in terms of having a student, and just be upfront and honest with that coach when you go in, because I think that's something that does not ever happen. It's like no student ever comes in and goes, "What are you looking for in a student?" And let me tell you what I'm looking for in a coach. Most of the time, it doesn't happen with any reciprocity there, because the white belt doesn't know what to expect. You can solve a lot of problems, white belts, if you go into an academy and you ask the coach what they're looking for in a student. And you ask these simple questions. What kind of a person are you looking for in a high-ranking student? What do you expect out of them? What are you looking for with these people? If they can't give you a good, articulate answer, then you kind of know what you're dealing with there. And we'll cover some of those here in just a minute. I wish this thing had some image stabilizer, because I'm still a little shaky from this anesthesia. So anyway, stewards, scholars, leaders, and narcissists. I'm looking for stewards, scholars, and leaders. And I generally find ways to depart with my narcissists pretty quickly. Sometimes they make it a little higher in rank than they probably should, because I give them opportunities to learn what kind of a coach I am, and often I still will allow them to promote somewhat through the rank system based on their technical merit. Now, what that means for me is that I have two criteria when it comes to promotions. Of course, I assess their technical ability, but and that's generally 100% just technical ability at the onset, white belt, blue belt. But right about the time they get to purple belt, I generally sit them down and try to challenge them to be acutely aware of their position within the community, meaning the jiu-jitsu community, because ultimately we're building a identity in this community, or you should be preparing for your black belt campaign. And if a coach is not preparing you in this manner, then you're missing a lot of very important learning objectives along the way, because if you do this right, you'll be embraced by the black belt community once you make it there. You'll look back on that, you'll feel rewarded in knowing that you were properly advised and properly set up for success at every belt along the way. So you need to know what it is that's expected of you. And so white and blue, I generally expect them to be largely focused on their technical ability, because it's very hard to be focused on anything else when there's so much to learn. And then purple belt is kind of the belt that I say is one of the hardest, because I expect them to not only invest a great deal of time into their skill set, but I also ask them to be acutely aware of the fact that they're building an identity within the community. And if they plan on being a black belt, then they need to start preparing themselves as such and put themselves on a trajectory to be admitted into that order. And a lot of times what that involves is either coaching in some way. I fundamentally believe that really everybody should try to experience the coaching side. Now, to some degree, there are a limited number of jobs in any academy, so that can become kind of difficult. But when I have a person that's truly interested in doing that, we generally try to make jobs up, even if they're not there, and we try to that will enhance the academy. But that purple belt campaign, I really feel that every good coach or a coach that is really motivated by the success of their students starts trying to prepare them in more of a administrative way than a technical way. And I think that if you look at it in just a technical way, starting at about that purple belt level, I think everybody kind of does it at blue belt, but if you stay on that path through that purple belt level, you start to move down that narcissist path, and it becomes about me versus them. It becomes about what I can do versus somebody else. And then every time there's a promotion, it turns toxic with you. I think and I see that a whole lot. And, that becomes a big problem. And that's where the ego tends to come in a negative fashion. Scholars and leaders. Well, let me go right back here. Purple belt. They should start working on helping to establish an identity. And they can do that through many ways. I start telling them to consider possibly going and being an IBJJF coach, so black belts see them on the mats. I ask them to consider going to tournaments and becoming a tournament coach, albeit because most of our director of programs are females in our organization. That's not exclusive in the tournaments. So we ask that they start putting in time and effort to go and coach tournaments, or assert themselves in other ways, step in and help in the kids' classes, and try to be a part of that and learn how to start coaching. Moreover, they can start stepping up and trying to coach some of the adult classes. I have underbelt programs where my coaches will start coaching the adult programs. So they start getting an identity. People start developing that respect for them, because we'll touch on that here in just a moment with leaders and scholars. And you can make a distinction there yourself and how important that is. So anyway, they start getting that reputation in the BJJ community by going to these tournaments and being seen in public and coaching and refereeing and doing all these different things. So they're building their own identity, because rest assured, this is a trade skill. I look at it very much like a trade skill. In our community, respect is a very, very big thing. And the things you hear on back channels about athletes who have jumped from coach to coach to coach to coach, it's terrible things. And they just decimate their image in public. Now, that's not to say they don't get chance after chance and get to get picked up by other people, and ultimately they eventually get a black belt put around their waist, but that's not without being at the expense of either their professors or their own image or whatever. And I think it's unfortunately, coaches don't realize that in some form or fashion they're responsible with raising people in this art, treating it much like bringing a child from childhood to being an adult. This social order is different than the general public, and we do things differently. There are many subsect society that operate and hold different morals and values and traditions, and they have to be brought up in that. So on that, we'll talk about a little bit about leaders and how important it is. I try to tell everybody, even if they're not an official leader in an academy, to be a sort of a ad hoc leader within their academies. And that is simple to do. That's your guy that is out there rolling with all the white belts. He's got some projects, what we call projects, which would be somebody he's bringing up or investing time into. May not be one of your head professors. He may not even be a black belt. He may be a purple belt. And he's spending a lot of time with the white belts, but bringing one to blue, carrying on the traditions and the thoughts and the values and the motivations of the professors and the administration at their academy. So they keep on injecting that fresh lifeblood into the academy. Those are the guys I'm looking for. I'm looking for those guys that are selfless and can find a way to work on their own skill set, but also be selfless at the same time. And I give them every opportunity to be leaders in the academy. So we talk about leadership. There's a big distinction, I think, between rank and respect. And, in the military, for all you military guys, there's a saying, I was not a military man, but I come up in 27 years of law enforcement, which is largely run off of rank. It's the same. It's a hierarchical rank structure. But the thing that's the notion that's held in the military is you respect the rank, not the man, or salute the rank, not the man. Well, by default, you're also saying you respect the rank, not the man. And in the military, I would argue it's even more important, because you're asking these leaders who hold these higher ranks to lead men into combat and fight for their country and their lives. And if you have a person that doesn't have your respect, through many reasons, there's going to be many reasons they don't have the troops' respect, they're going to be expected to follow this person whom they don't respect, and the results are catastrophic. And that's the notion that's held by the military. Now, somehow, a lot of times they manage to get it done through informal chains of command and informal leaders. There could be great leaders or terrible leaders at the top and great leaders at the bottom, and the troops generally will follow. They'll find one to follow. That's the way it's always going to be. In the BJJ community, it's not all that dissimilar from that, in that there are narcissists in our community that come up and swing to the other side of the fence there in terms of perspectives, and they feel that because they hold certain rank that they should be respected, or because they can beat this person, they're due, and this person represents a rank above them, that they're due for this rank at any given time. They believe that they're due for this rank at a given time based on the simple fact that in a technical level, or in a technical perspective, they're better than this person, or they may beat them consistently. And they look at that as the standard for the organization and feel that they now surpass that standard and are due for that rank. And with that comes an entitlement and a narcissism perspective that ultimately is going to sour some professors on that relationship. And I myself am one of those. I do not like the narcissistic approach. I don't value that in any form or shape or capacity. And at that point, once I detect that, generally, what I'll do is sort of in my own mind, that person kind of goes on the watch list at that point, and I'll do everything in my power to motivate them to try to right that wrong, change that pattern of behavior, move more toward being a leader, and be somebody, in the organization aside from that person who is only self-motivated and worried about sort of their capabilities against everybody else. So that's kind of the narcissistic perspective. And I want to say that it's very important for you to, as a white belt, now we're going to kind of go back, because most of the time, if I spot that narcissistic approach, most of those athletes will not make it past brown. That's just, and if they're at blue, they probably won't make it past purple. So if there's a period of time there where I'm going to have to watch that, and it could take years, it could take a period of time before you have to change your perspectives on that person and realize they don't represent you or the art the way you want to be represented, then it becomes a period of you just don't share interests, and you probably need to find a reason to part ways. Even if they're, paying customers. So I hear the argument all the time that there are people out there that have the perspective that they pay a membership, I'm there to provide a service, and that's that. Fair enough. Then if that person has that perspective that they pay a membership, that I provide a service, they need to understand the kind of service that I provide. And maybe they need to realize and rationalize the fact that their expectations of service don't meet mine. And they should probably take their expectations of service to another coach. So I dismiss that argument as being one that just kind of blast this all out of the water. If a person comes into my organization and thinks, well, I pay money, so you render the service, you don't need to be trying to manipulate my growth or inject your perspectives, thoughts. This is just about jiu-jitsu. That's fine. That's perfectly fine with me. If that person feels that way, then they need to make that known very quickly, and it will save both them and the coach a lot of heartache in trying to figure out that they just have irreconcilable differences that will not be hashed out, and they need to move on with their business, because they can find a coach that's like that. They are out there. This is not all that dissimilar from going to a fast food restaurant. You go to one, you expect one thing. You go to another, you expect something else. It's when you start going to the buffets that you don't always know what you're going to get. So I think it's important for both the coach and the athlete to cite their expectations up front, and for them to stay on clear channels of communication, so that in the event that this does start to crop up where a coach says, you know what, this athlete's not, their expectations aren't in line with mine, they're not representing me the way I want to be represented, then they can start looking at ways to transfer that athlete to a more suitable coach. And if looking for just jiu-jitsu is what they want, then there are gyms out there. There are those that myself that take a more holistic approach to it. I take an approach of we're building people here. The reason I say that is because I have had, in my experience as a coach, more people come into my gym that are looking for something. And I would have lost far more customers and far more friends and athletes had I have really just been the mindset of, you come in here, you pay, you play, you leave. I'd say most of my athletes have come into Sidewinder not always necessarily knowing what they're looking for, but they are looking for something, and they're looking for something very different. So when they come in, they are searching for more than just, I pay my money, I play, I leave. And if we didn't offer that in terms of life skills, life challenges, fellowship, brotherhood, other additional outlets, a social construct, those things were not available, the vast majority of my students would not be satisfied with where they're at. So, having said all that, there are two ways to approach the art. Again, we look at that narcissistic approach of I beat athlete X, so I should be rank X. And then there comes with it that entitlement. if that is the attitude that you have deep down, and I'm saying you're going to have to do a deep down assessment and be honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself and make yourself believe that you're a dog of a different color. If that's the kind of dog that you are, you need to admit that, because that's a toxic trait in one of these organizations. While it may not be in the other, it's going to lead to toxicity in the environments that are seeking those people who want to be more stewards, scholars, and leaders. You're going to have a harder time. You're not going to fit in as well. You're going to feel that you are probably going to feel that the gym that you're in is more of a cult than a pay to play. And that can cause some problems for you. You will probably find yourself making a rather quick exit. So keep in mind there's that approach. And then there's the approach of coming in and truly wanting to contribute to an organization and be a part of that organization. And when that happens, you're going to see success in that type of an organization. So the question becomes at that point, how does your coach approach rank and expectations? I had to change rooms here, get up and move around a little bit. So the question at that point becomes, how does your coach approach rank and expectations? And I think that is something that you need to know. And you need to know where their distinctions and ideology changes. And I may have previously mentioned it, that mine change at about that high blue belt level when you're trying to push into purple, and definitely through the purple, brown, and black campaigns. I expect that athletes of the high blues are now trying to turn more into contributors while they're balancing the need for self. I guess you call it essentially putting in work for the academy. And again, if you're that type that looks at it in terms of, well, now you should be compensating me for my efforts, then again, you are now by default in that pay-to-play realm, and where expectations need to lie entirely on your performance, and you need to find an academy that abides by that philosophy. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. Just saying it would be good for you to find an academy that meets with that expectation. Okay. And so that's pretty much it for me, is that I'm looking for how that person is going to represent me. How are they going to represent the art? Are they going to be a steward of the art in public? You know, are they the guy that's representing the art honorably, and staying involved in the art, active in it, and realizing there are going to be times throughout this campaign where they have to step away or whatever, but by and large, that person's body of work will speak for itself. It will entirely speak for itself, even if they have not been the most consistent at times, or maybe they've taken a year off or whatever. Guys, let's be honest, the average time is 8 to 10 years to black belt. Most people don't make it through that without having some pauses or life changes, or sometimes even a gym change or whatever. Totally understandable. But again, it's important to know exactly what your coach is looking for so that you can maintain that degree of performance. And we're not talking about, going out here and making it on SEAL Team 6 or something. I mean, this is just dedication to an organization, dedication to a lifestyle. I mean, most people, dedicate themselves to their profession because it's a value to them. It pays them. Everybody has different motivations, and the people that generally I look for are the people that are truly proud to be a part of the organization, truly proud to be in my lineage, and truly proud to wear our patch, truly proud to represent everybody. Ultimately, I find that those people who are name chasers, and I've had my run-in with those. I've had several of them in my career, and had several of them coming up through the ranks with my coach that I recognized right away were name chasers, where it's essentially a situation of they're always looking for, as far as being a student, they're always looking for the bigger, better coach, or the one that has more world championships, or this or that or the other. And to those folks that, or rank for that matter, your coach is a 3rd degree black belt, and New coach moves in down the road, the 5th or 6th degree black belt. Well, if 3 degrees is a huge deal, and that will change your dedication to your coach and to your organization, then you have some things to consider, as well as if you need to leave your coach to go to a coach that has a couple, 2, 3, or 4 world championships. You have some things to consider. And I'm not invalidating your perspective there if that's you. If you decide that you need to leave for those reasons, maybe that coach is actually a better coach. Great reason to leave. Maybe you've decided you want to move to this organization. You just gel better with that coach. Not a problem. And so I'm not dogging on anybody that wants to leave for any organization at all, or to any organization or any reason at all. I'm saying there are a variety of reasons that people want to leave, many of which I don't agree with, but it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means I have my perspective. And it also doesn't mean that person, needs to be bad-mouthed to the community or whatever. There are some instances where, just bad people get caught up in this art and they make it quite a long ways, and they're just inherently bad apples. That's life. They're always going to permeate every aspect of life. Those things happen. The leaving for different coaches and things like that, or if you're the bigger, better coach in person, and and you're always talking about that and doing all that, and you're that person, I would say to you, how often do you get to go home to your significant other and talk about other women and it not be a problem? To some degree, I've heard instances where guys are directly in coaching positions, and they are 100% constantly embracing other coaches' philosophies and directly teaching their material and their way of doing things, and bad-mouthing their instructors, their actual head black belts. And they're allowed to stay in academies, which is mind-blowing to me, because that's just boils down to simple respect and disrespect. So operating within an organization is it's something that can be fraught with minefields, and you got to be very careful about how you navigate those things. So keep that in mind. And a question was asked is, what should you be done with students who don't fit or ultimately become toxic, or toxicity forms in the organization? And I think every coach would agree it's in their best interest to remove that student, or find some way to transfer them to an organization that you feel fits them better. And I think the latter is the best way to approach it as a coach. You don't ever want to try to just leave a student hanging. I know in our culture, I ask several things of my coaches. Number one, I have always been 100% open to all my coaches training at other locations. I'm fine with that. If they want to go and train, and do, especially to get better, I recognize there are other organizations that do things better than me. It might be a place that does leg locks better. It might be a guy that's noted for doing a particular set of submissions a better way, or maybe they're a better guard passer, whatever. If that's around and I can get my athletes access to that, I generally believe in sending them over there to do that. And I entirely embrace them cross-training at other places, especially if they're doing tournament prep and they don't have what they need in-house. I've always wanted them to do that. But what we do not do is we don't have anybody else come over to our organization. We don't have open mats where just anybody can come into the academy. And I think you're seeing a shift toward that perspective more so now than you used to, because man, it's just, the art has just changed so much. I mean, there's just a lot of people out there that don't respect your organization, just come in and get a role. They don't help clean it. They don't do, they take advantage, and they're toxic in their own right. And it's just not worth the hassle to me. So we don't open our academy up. What I do have is standing agreements with other coaches to either send my athletes there and then have them send an athlete to us. Or if an athlete calls me with a specific thing they're trying to work on, I'll make arrangements with their professor, and we'll let them train at our place for free long enough to get to help them with whatever their needs are, and send them on down the road, and then they're welcome to come back in the future. So we do those types of things on a person-to-person basis, but we don't just hold open mats. So, and additionally, with that, my students being able to go and train elsewhere, that's just something I'm open. And I've heard a lot of stories about how coaches don't want their athletes training anywhere else, or whatever the case may be. And I don't ever really understand that. If you're that insecure about them, then you shouldn't have them coaching for you at all either anyway, or just your athletes, you shouldn't have them at all anyway. Now, as coaches, the only real requisite that I have is that my students not have be holding dual memberships, my coaches, because most of my coaches are compensated, unless they're on like a probationary period where we're learning, if they have the capacity or whatever. But once they enter full coaching status, there's a system of compensation that is in play for my coaches. And if they're not paying any form of due at my academy, I certainly don't want them, paying dues at another academy. I would much rather them let me make those arrangements for them, because 9 out of 10 times I'm capable of getting them, training days, a day here, a day there, or a week, 1 day a week, or whatever it is, for absolute free. So it wouldn't cost them anything anyway. So we don't allow our coaches to have coaching or to have student arrangements, standing paying memberships at other academies. That's just more of a non-compete type thing. Now, students, if they want to hold 10 different memberships, they can hold all they want. So no issues there. But anyway, that's kind of it, guys. And on the contribution side of it, I have here coach, fighter, public, and private, as far as their contributions to the art. I want that noted, that for me, and guys, bear in mind at the end of this video, everybody that's watching this video, some of you guys are coming from outside and you're watching this video and getting a black belt's opinion on business and how they run it, how things are done. For me, this is largely being written or being filmed for the benefit of my own students. So they understand that, at white and blue, they're being held to a technical expectation. And then about purple belt, they need to come and sit down and have a good talk with me, because, and generally I'll approach them at some point, well before that they're now being considered for their contributions, more so than their technical ability, or at least 50-50. Most of the time it's going to be double. So on the contribution side of it, whether they're a coach, a fighter, and how they handle themselves in public and private, what are they doing for the organization, in the organization during class time? Are they bringing people up? Are they, do they have a service in the gym that they provide, or are they going to tournaments and helping, helping their time? And again, most of our tournament coaches, all of our tournament coaches, there's a system of compensation there. So they're not just giving their time away for free. But we do have periods where they work into that type of stuff. So it's your entire body of work. Let's just say that, between purple, brown, and black. It's not, you're not, with me, you're not going to just go from blue to purple because you can kick this guy's ass and he's a purple. Unfortunately, in my academy, that's not the standing order. And if that's the expectation that my students have all throughout the ranks, they're going to find themselves probably making an exit, and going to find a different organization that meets their expectations. So I make sure that is understood for me. Now, for those of you that are here and you take exception to my perspectives, I'll issue an apology to you guys and say I apologize that you feeling that way. We are not a cult. We do not refuse. I do not make people buy my gear. In fact, let's talk about cultish things. I do not force people to buy my gear, wear my patch. In fact, you can't even have my patch until you earn it. There's requisites for that. You can't have a nameplate. You can't have the Sidewinder patch until you do things for that. Some of which are things like go compete, go win a tournament, or get on the podium. You can't just come in and buy my gear. I don't require people to wear that or to buy it to be on the mats. I do not place myself in a position where I expect people to worship me at all. Quite the contrary. I put all my students out front in terms of who I expect the rank and file to follow. Right about purple belt, I start trying to make these people step up and become leaders in my academy. So, being the ranking belt, 4th degree black belt, a lot of times I see in the cultish type side of it is these coaches, it's a power trip. They want people to follow them. It's all about the attention that they get from their students. I'm pretty much the opposite. I really don't like the attention. I don't want to be out front. My academy managers are my people that are out front. And that's in terms of managing the academies. And then the directors are next. Those are going to be the directors of the kids program and the people that teach the adult programs and all that. Those are the people that my parents interact with. They're the people the white belts and the blue belts interact with most, and our coach rollers. Those are the guys that are put in a position that have proven that they can bring people up and they can make people a project. And so those are the people that the white and blue belts turn their attention to when they start putting people on a pedestal, not myself. I'm far too busy trying to run the business and develop the business to be worrying about trying to maintain all those individual relationships. It's far easier for me to invest my time in my senior belts and let that trickle down. And then they'll eventually get to me when they start to move up the chain. So cultish wise, not us. We're definitely a organizational sort of a subculture, but not cultish in any stretch of the imagination. So anyway, those of you guys that feel to the contrary about that, just wanted to get that opinion out. You're welcome to post whatever you want in the content or the comments down there. Say this to everybody with much respect, love, and admiration. Even if you are not one of those people that, like, I may be saying this to somebody in my organization right now that's thinking of this and going, I think this way. I think it should be totally based on who beats who. To you, I say very pointedly, make an exit, because we're not gonna see eye to eye on that. You would either probably need to change your perspective, and embrace the aforementioned things that I've stated here, or you probably need to go find an academy that's more fitting to your expectations, because I'm just not that guy. I don't see things that way. And I refuse to change that and run my academy based off of who kicks whose ass on any given day. That's just not the way I do it. And I've had those guys, and I would say you probably need to find a better academy, and I'll help you do that if that needs to be done. To the people who are not my students that feel that way, approach your coach, please. Find out what kind of coach they are. Everybody that's watching this is not a Sidewinder student. Approach your coach and find out what kind of coach they are. Find out what they expect, starting at about that purple for sure, but I just go, Coach, what do you expect of blue, purple, brown, and black? A good way to pose the question without upsetting them is to go, Coach, what might I expect to be looking at as I progress through the belt systems? Like as a purple belt, it's good to ask as a white belt. As a purple belt, do you expect your students to be, heavily involved in the organization? Do you want them to start coaching along the way? Are you, what do you want to see your students do ultimately that make it to black? What is an ideal black belt? That's a good thing to ask. What's an ideal black belt for you? That's a really good question, because it speaks in generalities. So that'll tell you right there. Your coach, if your coach speaks out and says, they're able to go to IBJJF, competitions and beat black belts and win championships, then that tells you you're at an all comp gym right there, buddy. And you better be ready to put out every day, because the minute somebody comes in off the streets, kicks your ass, you're behind the curve. And that's a performance measure every day. If your coach says something similar to what I'm saying, they're probably more of a balanced coach that places great value on competition, but also places great value in institution. So hope this found you guys well. God bless everybody, man. I'm blessed. I'm above ground. Had my surgery, recovering, and love all my students. I got great students. Super happy with everything we've got. We've had our ups and downs. Gotten rid of a few that did not live to that perspective. And, with blessings, they found a new and good home for them as well. So all is well on this end. Give all the grace and the glory and the thanks to God for that. So if you have any questions, comments, or you'd like to see another video, post down below. Happy to give you my perspectives. Have a good day, guys.